It happened. I'd been telling you. I told you it was going to happen. I stopped running again. I ran like 5 straight days, and now now it's raining. And oh, and Trent Alexander-Arnold now is going to play for Real Madrid next season. This was I should have bet something. I'm not a betting man, and I never will be. But I should have bet something on this, because there's just certain things that you can see that are so obvious. So unbelievably obvious that they're going to happen. And that was Trent Alexander-Arnold waiting until Liverpool won the league to announce what I'm assuming everybody in his camp and probably a lot of people at Liverpool have known for a while, that he's going to go to Real Madrid. It is a staple of the modern game to have players manipulate situations to be able to get to their the end of their contract and leave on a free. And this has obviously kicked off a huge wave of different discussions and conversations. It is like the top billing thing that anybody in the world of football wants to talk about. But I think that there is one thing that is above every other one of those things, and that is Jamie Carragher, who is a Liverpool legend, right? And Trent Alexander-Arnold is also a Liverpool legend, right? Even if a lot of Liverpool fans kind of hate him right now. I mean, the man won everything that you could win after spending 20 years at the club, right? Even if those 20 years started at the age of 6, I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there and just kind of include him in that category. And Carragher, who never won the Prem, but obviously won a bunch of other stuff, he's the person that weighed in on this first. And that's what I wanted to fixate on. Because what Jamie Carragher said was that essentially he is bothered by a bunch of people that aren't Liverpool fans trying to tell Liverpool fans how to feel. And that I think is a very, particularly for TV punditry, stunningly reasonable take. Just an incredibly reasonable thing to say, that in this situation like this, where if you're a Liverpool fan, you're card carrier, you've watched every game or a lot of games in Trent Alexander-Arnold's career, a lot more than me, somebody who is not a Liverpool fan and is not watching them play in the early rounds of the League Cup or whatever, right? Then you are the person that is going to have to decide for yourself how you feel about Trent Alexander-Arnold now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, right? You are the person that gets to decide what his legacy is in your eyes, who he is in your eyes, and how correct this decision was. Right? And I'm not going to sit here and try and tell you exactly how to feel, but I am going to break it down as far as I understand it and how I feel about certain things and why I think that Trent Alexander-Arnold, given the facts of the situation, did not have a lot of options about how he wanted to handle this. And it is a very difficult situation where you're not ever going to have everybody be happy. And those facts of the situation are pretty simple. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold realized a couple of years ago that he probably wasn't going to want to spend his entire career at Liverpool, somewhere after he said he wanted to be the captain after Van Dijk, obviously. And I think that a contributing factor to that is probably a phone call or a text or a message or an email or a pigeon mail from Florentino Perez. We have heard stories of other players like Rudiger mentioning that their thinking changed when Florentino Perez reached out and formed a relationship with them and was basically telling them years before they ended up joining his team that he thought that they could be a Real Madrid player, that he would love to have them, that they fit into the project, and that if the opportunity ever came up in the future, that, maybe they could make something work, which is honestly the equivalent of a mafia boss in 1930s New York telling you it'd be a shame if something happened to this wonderful business you've built, and then you end up paying them a protection fee, right? That's the same sort of conversation Florentino Perez seems to be having with all sorts of players all over the place is, well, if something happens in the future, and what's insinuated in that is, if we don't have to pay a lot of money for you. He did it with Rudiger. He did it with Mbappe. He managed to snake one of, if not the most individually talented player on the face of the earth when he wants to be, for free by doing this. By planting that seed. He's almost like a psychologist, right? With the ability that he has to manipulate these situations and his ability to, and manipulate might be a strong word, but his ability to basically connect with people and say, hey, we would like to have you here. Wouldn't you like to be a part of Real Madrid and, the biggest, best team in the world? And I think Trent decided probably more than a year ago that was what he wanted to do. But it is also apparent, as it was to Rudiger and Mbappe, that they don't want to pay a lot of money at Real Madrid. The way Real Madrid's going to stay relevant is not by spending hundreds of millions of dollars. That is reserved for Premier League teams that have that money when it comes to the FFP. Spanish financial laws are even stricter. They basically get a salary cap budget based off their intake over the previous year of what they're able to spend. So if Real Madrid wants to keep up with the Joneses here, they have to sign players for cheap. And so what we have now is a situation where we have Trent Alexander-Arnold who wants to go to Real Madrid, which I'm going to be totally honest, does not bother me. Even though I'm obviously not a Liverpool fan, but just looking at it as a neutral, as a would I be bothered, I think, if I was a Liverpool fan, I don't think that would bother me. The guy gave 20 years of his life to the club. He won every trophy, and he would potentially be leaving from the top of the game. Now, I realize that a lot of people are obviously hurt. You know, they're hurt because this kid is, you know, he's on the murals. I mean, everybody always posts that one mural, right? But he's the type of guy you put on the murals as a lad from Liverpool that grew up and achieved all of his dreams. I mean, he won the Champions League playing with the club that he joined when he was 6 years old. It's what football is all about. It's the type of player that exists less and less in modern football. And so the ones that do exist, whether it be Trent or Phil Foden or whoever, right? You form a particularly strong emotional attachment with that player because, my goodness, are surrounded by all of these world-class superstars from every ass crack of the world is this one kid that grew up down the street, and he's always been a fan of this club. You feel like extra connected to that one particular player. And I get that. And it's kind of heartbreaking and soul-crushing to realize that player might want to go somewhere else, but it's also, you know, just a human being. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's, you know, hating on Liverpool in any way. And of course, in his apology, he goes way out of the way, obviously, to make it clear that he's going to be a Liverpool fan forever and he wants to do this, wants to do that, whatever. But I'm not surprised that somebody would want to go play at another club. I think if I was a professional player, right, which I'm not, so I'm not dealing with the same stresses or pressures or expectations or whatever. If I was, I'd probably want to use that to travel around a little bit. I mean, I love travel. I love the idea of living in different countries, right? I think it's cool. And so I would probably try to use my professional career to further that, in the furtherance of that. Now, Trent obviously wants to do this too, and David Beckham, I think, it's a good example from the past of a type of guy that came up at a club, was always a fan of a club, and then kind of went out to explore the world. He had a falling out with the manager, right? But it always ends ugly. That's the second part of this, is it always ends. Now, obviously, if you're a Liverpool fan, you're preferring that it ends the way that Thomas Muller's, you know, path ended, where he stayed at the club until the club told him they didn't want him anymore. It's kind of awkward because Thomas Muller was a little public about the fact that he wanted to keep playing, but Bayern basically told him, we're not going to renew your contract. It's not going to happen. And what happened here in this Trent instance is essentially the player decided that it was time to move on before the club. But it's always going to end in one of those ways. And I think something that maybe you can take solace in if you're a fan of Trent and you're upset that people are coming at him and going after him is that, you know, when David Beckham left, it was not super smooth. But 15, 20 years later, everybody at Manchester United's forgotten, and he is just beloved for what he accomplished while he was there. And that is not the only instance of that sort of thing in the history of football. Time heals all wounds. In 10, 15 years from now, if Trent comes back to the ground, I don't imagine that he's going to get some sort of icy reception, walking around with all of his Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup medals. Right. I don't think they're going to be looking at him and going, fuck you. You know, I don't think that's going to be happening. Right. So we have a situation where Trent Alexander-Arnold wants to leave and he knows he probably has to leave on a free. And we have a situation where he ended up pissing a bunch of people off. But my question is, what are the options here? We kind of war gamed this out on stream today. Like, what are the different ways that you could handle this? If you assume that Trent definitely wants to leave, and that the only way he can join the one team he wants to play for outside of Liverpool is on a free. Because that's another thing that people have been really upset about. And this one I get more, in that Trent didn't get any money for the club. Trent is an unbelievably valuable player. If he was on a 4-year contract, you'd be expecting $100 million just to talk to him. Okay, but he's not, and he wasn't, and Liverpool sat on that fact for a long time, and they let Trent do this to them. Now, I think Trent did this to them because he wanted to go to Real Madrid again, and going there on a free was the only way he was going to be able to go there. But that puts Liverpool in a difficult situation. This has been a development over the last 10 years, really, in the world of football, of players realizing they have a lot more power than they thought if they're willing to just get to the end of their contract. And, massive, exorbitant transfer fees for these players in their primes, especially in an era of FFP, don't make as much sense. And so people like Florentino Perez can go, look, we can't pay a lot of money for you, but if you want to play here, we'd love to have you. And then Trent will try and go after that. Now, what happens if Trent comes out at the beginning of the year, where I think he probably already knew he was going to go to Real Madrid? And I'm not the only one, obviously. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to leave at the end of the season. I want to help play with the team. I want to try and win a title. Well, then Liverpool could go scorched earth. They could. They might. Try to force him to go somewhere else, try to sell him, as Real Madrid and Barcelona and a bunch of other clubs have proven very capable of, turn on a giant PR machine to start shitting on Trent to try and force him to leave and take money and just basically pressure him into doing something that he doesn't want to do. I think maybe the best way to handle it would be announce in January that he was going to leave at the end of the season, but that, the title push was on, the Champions League push was on, and I'm going to try to help the club win as many trophies as possible. And I think even the way that he handled it now would have been better if Trent wasn't so damn awkward about the whole thing. It is very clear watching this video, which, obviously it's like 3 minutes, and the first 30 seconds are really Trent talking about why he wants to leave, and that's what I'm going to play.
Okay. After 20 years at Liverpool Football Club, I'll be leaving at the end of the season. I think the decision for me is personal. To change environment, to challenge myself elsewhere. It's not about wanting to find something better. It's about me and my personal journey as a player, and I feel like now is the right time for me to go and experience that.
And he repeats that one or two more times. And look, I know a lot of people are going to shit on him for looking emotionless or whatever, but let's be honest. You put 95% of the population in this situation and talking to a camera and trying to read off a script in the same time, and they're not going to give you a great performance either. He gets more choked up and more emotional kind of later in the video when he talks about his time at Liverpool, but I'm not going to give him any negative points for looking emotionless. I mean, Jamie Vardy looked like he was, reading some sort of hostage statement while he was saying bye to Leicester, right? It's just people looking for another reason to kind of go after Trent, and he deserves to be gone after in some sense because he knew he was doing this for a long time and he waited very late to announce it and maybe strung Liverpool on at the same time. But what I got from this first 30 seconds was basically that Trent is very uncomfortable explaining himself. I think if he'd confidently come out and been like, I'm ready for a new challenge. I've always wanted to play abroad. It's been part of a dream of mine. I've accomplished every dream I could here, right? Maybe they should just hire me to write these PR statements. But if he comes out and says that sort of stuff with confidence at the beginning of the season or in January and says, look, this is what I'm trying to do, but I'm still really focused on Liverpool and trying to win the league this season. And he says in his statement he didn't want to distract from that league run, and I get it. I mean, when you try and understand and explain the logic of why Trent announced it when he did and waited so long to announce that he was leaving, I do get that. And it highlights that given the fact that he wanted to go to Real Madrid and the fact that he could only do that on a free, there was basically no perfect way for him to do this where even a majority of people would think he was handling it in a good way. But that doesn't mean that you have to like it, right? And I go back to what Carragher said at the beginning. If you're a Liverpool fan, you get to decide how you feel about this and how this, meshes with your understanding of football and Trent and your own morals and what you would do in this situation or whatever, right? But this is not the last time this sort of thing is going to happen in the modern game. This is going to happen more and more, and it seems that the blueprint is these players are going to wait until very late in the season. But I would respect them a lot more if they came out at the beginning of the year, and he basically told Liverpool, look, you can't transfer me. I only want to go to Real Madrid, but I want to help this team this year. And a final note at the end, people that are upset with Trent for going to a rival, A player as good as Trent Alexander-Arnold is only going to go to a handful of teams on the face of the earth if he's ever going to leave Liverpool in a million years. And every single one of those teams is going to be a rival in the Champions League. So Real Madrid is the evil empire, and it's annoying, obviously, that they continue to collect Infinity Stones for free. But I think if Trent was ever going to want to go play somewhere else and broaden his horizons and get a different experience and make his personal decision for his development as a player or whatever the hell else he wants to say, it was going to be to a team that was going to be playing against Liverpool at some point in Europe. So that's just the way the cookie crumbles.